90.7 KPFK, Los Angeles.
IMRU presents Unzipped with Carrie Harrison, exploring the complexity of human desire, where intimacy means insight, uncovering the truth about sex and relationships, delving into the science of seduction, your sex, your stories, and everything in between. This is Unzipped. Ow! With Carrie Harrison.
And it is Unzipped. Hoping you enjoyed last week. We did a special looking at Harvey Milk, looking at pride, and the importance of still having pride for so many millions of people across the U.S., not to mention the planet of Earth, where it continues thriving, except maybe in places like Hungary, where it's now illegal. We're going to sort of touch on the importance of things and also storytelling and why that's important for all of us. Let's say hi to Flash. Flash, I understand you're feeling a little froggy today.
I have a little bit of a frog in my throat, but very happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're here too. We're going to visit today a little bit about storytelling and all of the different ways of doing it. And I know that's been in your nature for many, many years. You being a veteran radio person and a great storyteller. So how fun to be able to explore that together.
Yeah, and wonderful guests today. Can't wait.
Well, all right. Let's just jump right on into it, shall we? We're going to talk to, let me just set this one up pretty well. We've got, how do we want to, there we go. Looks like the mic's just chopped off. The beautiful essence of the internet there. Okay.
That's such a tragedy because that was the most amazing setup I've ever heard, introduction ever in my lifetime. And I hope someone recorded it somewhere because really we can see that back and students are going to study this at universities for years.
We can only hope. My monologues being world famous, that was one of the silent versions, which is probably better felt than actually heard.
We had puppets behind the scene acting it out. It was very, very good.
Well, I'm glad you really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Well, let's explore this labyrinth of identity and public spectacle. Who better than one of its architects, a purveyor of stories where the queer Chinese-American drag artist can also sink a decisive free throw, a chronicler, no less, who faced the delightful irony of far-right extremists attempting to silence a drag story hour, the sheer exquisite absurdity, modern crusaders valiantly protecting the tender minds of our youth from glitter and good intentions. So this is what we turns out to be. I live in the state of Florida often, and here, of course, books are banned, freedom of speech is gone, and all the rest of it, including many drag queens who thrive here, by the way. It's like wherever somebody says no, they're out there saying yes. One almost has to admire, really, the sheer, unadulterated zeal of it all, even as you quietly despair for the species, the human species, a truly dystopian delight in these days when the grandest battles are fought over the most dazzlingly innocuous expressions of joy. So let's say hi right now to Kyle Casey Chu. We want to welcome you to Unzipped.
Hello, Carrie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so sorry about the internet issues.
Well, I have sent a text to Al Gore. I'm waiting for an apology. When that arrives, I will share that with you.
I wait with bated breath alongside you.
Yes, my breath is baited too with shrimp and probably a badly tied lure. But let's jump right onto it. You've offered us a protagonist, Derek Chan, who's a queer Chinese-American drag artist, also a basketball star, because they go well together. Considering this meticulously crafted duality, was the very act of writing this novel a deliberate excavation of your own complex intersectional identity?
I would say it was. And, I'd say the one through line between basketball and drag is that they are both contact sports. But beyond that, Derek himself is struggling to negotiate two different loves, his love for sports and his team, and his love for drag and the spotlight and the makeup and the glamour of it all. And he does it against the backdrop of small town rural Georgia, where he has the accompaniment of his grandma, Claudia, who's a seamstress, and teaches him more about his Chinese American heritage.
You know, in these times, and I keep saying I don't want to talk politics, it's dangerous, take a switch and flatten out the footprints behind your path and all, let's just all be careful and all the rest of it. But the fact is, you probably saw halftime at Super Bowl. I mean, we all did. Not that you loved it or hated it, but we saw it. We all saw it. And it was tens of thousands of people that don't look like me. Now, people are only hearing my voice, but you could probably guess I didn't look like them. That's what America looks like. It's been erased. Publicly being erased are millions of people who don't necessarily want to be erased. In these times, do you find that your book is more than just here's a good book to read, but it's kind of a call to action?
I'd say it's inherently so just by virtue of writing one's own story. When there are prevailing narratives and misinformation about groups of our most vulnerable communities that are lambasting them and scapegoating them for a lot of the country's ills, it is a natural form of resistance and it is a natural call to action to tell your own story truthfully and from a place of honesty. And that's what I strive to do in this book.
So your own early years feature a similar tightrope walk between private passions and public personas. How closely does Derek's initial journey mirror the peculiar agonies and ecstasies of your own coming of age?
That's a good question. I would say there are Venn diagram overlaps between Derek and myself, to be certain. And there are also certain communities and certain passions that he has that I don't share. I wasn't a basketball player. Um, I never played on a team or grew up in Georgia, but we shared that we came out in the seventh grade and came to our sense of self in the world very early on. And I think at this particular stage of development, it's so crucial and of utmost importance for us to fit in. It's a survival need. Because going back to the caveman days, if you don't gel with your group, then you're sleeping outside of the cave, right? And so I think it's pertinent to readers of this age to understand that as they're coming to their sense of self and to their sense of morality, that there is a community that's ready to receive them and that there's nothing more rewarding than being your truest self. And so that's what I tried to bring to the book.
Kyle, where did you learn to write?
It's funny you asked that because I started writing in the seventh grade around when I came out. And looking back, the vaguely plotless novel that I wrote, that was, 200 plus pages, which was Herculean for that age for me. It was all me just learning how to process who I was and my place. And so from then, it's just become a deeply cathartic practice. I do morning pages. I started writing stories and films with my friends, and it's just been a part of me since.
And you've always been supported in that? Was anybody critical? Did you have to get over any hurdles?
Oh, there were obstacles and there were adversities for sure. Being one of the first openly queer people in the seventh grade in my entire school was challenging. I lost my friends overnight, um, and I felt that I did not belong in the world. And it was because of mentors and adult figures like my honors English teacher and the teachers who opened their classroom doors for me to eat lunch indoors with them so I wouldn't get harassed, who really helped me become the writer I am today. And you know, it was a challenge for my parents at first to accept, but I think love prevailed in this instance, and they understood that they needed to accept all of me in order for us to remain in each other's lives. And I'm so glad that that was the decision they made.
Do you think, Kyle Casey Chu, that part of your parents being good parents is that you were being a good son at the same time?
Wow, I've never been asked that, but it's funny because I certainly don't think I was a good son at the time. I was angsty, I had bangs, much like I do now. I was going through it in all sorts of ways and trying to process it, in some ways more maladaptive than helpful. And so I really owe it to the patients that they had to see me through that and to understand that the pain I was going through was temporary and could be ameliorated with their support. Um, so I feel like for those years of, agonizing, uh, growing pains, I've hoped to improve as a child of theirs and to return the favor of the loving support that they gave me.
My parents, my mother, a cross between Mommy Dearest and Cruella de Vil on a good day. That was maybe Tuesday once a year when she was not. My father, who collected German war memorabilia, if you catch my drift, something very popular these days, I'm
Wow,
told. I turn on the
striking.
news. There it is. It's striking. It's shocking. So I was a recalcitrant maladaptive like you, without, I think, any of the positive nurturing. But you and I have ended up on the same basketball court, so to
Oh,
speak. Like we both ended up kind of in the same place, except that you've written a book and I'm a wastrel. But that's okay. I admit it freely. Um,
Andy's humble.
yes, exactly. Um, you you draw between the raw athleticism of basketball and the refined spectacle of beauty pageants. Now, this is a special skill set. Let's face it. Beyond the obvious performative elements, what deeper, maybe more unsettling similarities did you uncover in these seemingly disparate arenas?
Well, I have a background as a social worker, and I studied social formations growing up, especially as it pertains to team sports, social coherence, etc. Cohesion, sorry. And part of what I learned is that it's through team sports, it's through competing that middle graders often learn who we are. We come to our own sense of morality, of what's right and wrong. We can support each other through difficult things. We can experience failure, heartbreak, triumph, and success. And it's through these crucibles that our characters are forged. And I found that a lot of the same pressures and a lot of the same unhealthy styles of competition exist in both arenas, in sports to be certain, and also through certain social pressures of the Southern pageant world. And I think a through line through this is being able to find your own people within a team and within the need to identify who you are and identify your group, you can really cultivate lifelong friendships. And so I think it's kind of like a rite of passage to experience a team sport and to figure out who you are. Um, and so I think both are demonstrated through these very ostensibly different worlds.
Let's talk for a second about drag. And because this is broadcast radio, it means who knows who's listening. So it's not the echo chamber necessarily. Just like you were butted up against people who disagreed, didn't understand, pushed back, wanted you silenced, there are maybe going to be people listening who don't really get drag. They just don't get, like, why would somebody do that? There's a real why people do that. And it matters. It touches people.
Mhm. Yeah, I'd say so. And there's a lot of hyperbole and sensationalism around drag. And, this is an entirely different conversation, but it's often to distract from the larger thefts and injustices that are happening right under our noses. And so this is just the most recent occurrence of turning a vulnerable community into a boogeyman for political reasons. But all that drag really is trying to feel like your most magnificent and powerful self. And to me, what that means is growing up as an assigned male person, I was pressured to strangle off all the feminine parts of myself. I edited the way that I walked, I edited the way that I talked. I tried to lower the pitch of my voice, also that I wouldn't experience violence. And what drag is doing is it's taking all of those suppressed parts of ourselves, all those parts that need love and attention, and giving it airtime. It's blowing it up and adding some glitter and really celebrating those aspects and letting it live. Because not doing that is an empty life, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
And I mean, who doesn't, if you ended up in a horrible legal situation, who wouldn't want a drag queen as their lawyer?
Honestly, the presence. You just need that verve sometimes, especially this month.
So you've written a book, and it's called Queen Bees, and you encourage people to find their people through doing what they love. Now, this is age old. This goes back to Socrates, it's Plato, it's Bill Shakespeare, to thine own self be true, though he sure didn't mean that in the way he wrote it, but out of context, it's pretty damn lovely. Being congruent with your nature, all of that seemed to be the marching orders, especially in LA. Be authentic, be authentic. And when people are, they're like, don't do that. So it's a delicate tightrope dance, because you can be authentic to the point that other people accept it. So in a way, I'm just going to make this up, but I think drag is, for some people, let's say in the military, if you could dress up like a general, you feel powerful. If you can be a vulnerable person and dress up in drag and look like a 10-foot tall, fierce woman, nobody's going to screw with you.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought this up because I feel like in queer terms, especially for coming of age stories and when discussing self acceptance with youth, we often think about self acceptance as a destination, as, one day you're going to accept yourself for who you really are. And then once you've landed there, then life is just sunshine and daisies and roses for the rest of it. And that's not really how it works. I think it's a constant conversation and it's a constant dialogue with forces in your life, whether it's the people you aren't out to at work, or your neighbor who, or somebody who tries to discuss sports with you and you really want to have nothing to do with that, but because of a mask cover that feels safer to you, you might put it on. And I think what drag is it's just a constant practice and a constant reminder and a constant meditation and conjuring yourself up and reminding yourself that there are aspects of you that, even if you're afraid to reveal them or share them with certain people, that you can still enjoy them, and that you can create a world in which the people that you interact with do accept it. And so that's all it is. It's just a constant practice.
Now, you pitched Queen Bees of Tybee County to a major publisher, HarperCollins Books, no slouch by any stretch. The way they received this book, because they do a lot of other stuff that frankly isn't this. So they must have seen this as powerful as it is.
I mean, I hope they did. And I'm really grateful to my editor, Jen Ung, and my agent, Kristen Otsby from Greenhouse Literary, and Anna Carey, and Ali Standish, and all of the mentors who helped craft this story and Derek's journey into what it is. Um, and I'm glad that it's being positively received. I went actually to my alma mater middle school, which was such a trip, and you know, talked to the kids about writing and just coming into authorship and into themselves. And it was wild. It was a wild experience. And it was very full circle to hear them talk about their own queer identities with such passion and language that I didn't have at the time. And it's that kind of insight that makes me proud of the kids and hopeful for the future that, they're really going to be all right. Um, but I feel like if there's just one kid out there who reads this and feels seen in it, or at least feels a little less alone, then I will have done my job as a writer. And I'm really grateful that I have had that experience and have connected with readers who've communicated that. So it's been a gift.
Let's finish with looking back for you. What piece of advice would you give your younger self about navigating your teenage years?
It's so hard to come up with a soundbite that isn't trite or hasn't been said a trillion times before, but it's been said a trillion times before, perhaps because it's true. But really find what makes you happy singularly in a vacuum without the feedback of your peers. And I know it's so difficult at this time, but looking back, there were a lot of things that I wish that I'd done, but was too afraid to try. And now that I'm an adult and I am not afraid to be cringe and I'm fully embracing it, I am enjoying every minute of it. And if you can give yourself that gift to be cringe and to be free, then that's a great life. And I wish that for all of you.
What about people that live in really rural areas? Because I think it was hard always, but now I think there are obstacles that we never would have imagined, say, 4 months ago.
And
Mhm.
where did you grow up and go to school, Kyle?
I grew up in San Francisco. I was very lucky
Okay.
to. There were abundant and visible queer and trans communities. There were Asian American communities. It was very distinct from the settings that are presented in the book. And so everything I say is coming from this standpoint, and I want to be very clear about that. But I think what I found is, even in this city, pre-adolescence, adolescence can be lonely, can be hard, and you can feel like the only person in the world who's experienced this or has ever experienced it. All you need is one person. You just need one friend. You just need one book. You just need one movie, and to hold on to it like a life raft for dear life, because these are the mirrors, these are the windows that are going to get you through, that got me through. And I think with each piece of media, with each story told, with each performance, and especially with, the internet and like the abundance of narratives out there, with each piece that we receive as a gift to ourselves, we can see who we're possibly becoming and where we can possibly go. Um, and so please hold on to that hope, and please understand that even as isolating as it can feel, everything you're feeling right now has been felt before, I promise. And you just need to find those people because that's where your people are.
Well, thank you so much. Very much. Thank you. We've been talking to Kyle Casey Chu, aka Panda Dulce, a writer, filmmaker, and one of the founding queens of Drag Story Hour. In June 2022, far-right extremists stormed her Drag Story Hour. In an attempt to silence her, she's now using her global platform to tell even gayer stories. Living in San Francisco, within nagging distance of her families, both drag and biological, The Queen Bees of Tybee County is her first novel, and you can find it through HarperCollins Books. I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me, Carrie. I really appreciate it.
Glad to have you on. Thank you so much. Coming up, we're going to be talking to Billy Foster. He's the founder and creative technologist behind Gay Phoenix, or gayphx.com, which is a community-powered platform that spotlights LGBTQ plus events, people, and stories across the valley. He's a former radio producer turned full-stack developer. Billy built Gay PHX to serve as both a digital home and rally point for Phoenix's queer community. He's also a veteran radio guy. If you guys remember Air America Network, the follower to that, he was really the captain of that ship. So we're going to talk a little radio too. And all that is coming up in just a sec.
IMRU presents Unzipped with Carrie Harrison. Your sex, your stories, and everything in between. IMRU presents Unzipped with Carrie Harrison, exploring the complexity of human desire and everything in between.
Is Unzipped Flash. Carrie Harrison with you, and along with the great Ray, who is our producer-trix and awesome woman of the world. So thank you so much. Without her, the technical side and the intellectual side would not be possible. I would be walking on my knuckles hispidiously, probably the fourth knuckle on the right hand with a wobble, and I would look particularly simian.
Hold on, looking up hispidiously. How do you spell that?
HISPID. ULOUS.
I forgot what we were even talking about. Please go on.
That's it. Just hairy ape time for me. Let's bring in Billy Foster. Now, Billy is a radio guy. Flash, you're a radio woman. We've all been in this business forever, it seems. And Billy is jumping into the podcasting world now after really having controlled an entire network of AM talk radio stations, and realizes that getting the word out is everything nowadays. And he has taken the market of Phoenix and turned it into a vibrant kumbaya for people that are TW, or that way, as we would say 40 years ago. We're now having to speak in code once again, given the FCC that we deal with. Billy, I want to thank you for joining us on Unzipped and me and Flash.
Thanks for having me on. I'm not used to being on this side of the mic. I used to be a producer, and then now it's turned into trying to be a host. And so, yeah, it's now as an interviewee.
Would you want to sit on the other side of the mic? If you can move, I'll just watch.
No, it's all good.
I'm glad that you have a pop screen on the video stream of this, which you can catch on YouTube and other places. Go ahead and give us a plosive so that we can hear how that works.
A plosive?
They're good. Done.
Is that like that? Excellent.
So let's start with radio for just a second, because people that listen to radio actually like radio. They're not thinking they're listening to a stream, even though they may be streaming it. But there's a ton of people listening to the FM station right now who actually enjoyed turning on the appliance and listening to it. There's sort of a magical touch, a connection between our voices and people's earballs. And you've stuck with it for a lot of years. You actually ran a giant organization for a long time when getting out the message was important then, and now it's important again.
Yeah, it feels like it was funny because I actually last night just got surprised by some of the old staff from the Air America Phoenix days. And so it was like coming home week. So it's been really interesting. I said, basically I've got to do it again. Just doing it without a transmitter now. So
and you've taken the market of Phoenix, which is a giant market, and you're suturing together different groups of people there by talking about what's actually relevant to people. So talk a little bit about your podcast.
So what we do is we're really focused on trying to connect people. There's a saying out there: connecting people boosts our mood, our morale, our friendships, provide us the emotional, psychological strength to deal with whatever comes our way, whether it's an exciting opportunity, a challenge, or a crisis. And I feel like all three of those are happening at the same time right now.
Well, I think Flash and I, who have talked many times about how radio has evolved and changed and keeps morphing. Flash, what's your take on where radio was even like 15 years ago compared to today?
Well, I think most people will agree with consolidation of the media industry. Oh, I think my mic's a little low. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, I think with the consolidation, as we've seen probably over the last 20 years, and certain companies, most of talk radio now, unless you're listening to public or community radio, is going to be very curated to a certain crowd. And I think that is keeping people away to some extent if you have a different opinion. So it's very, very formatted and very curtailed to a certain audience. And it's not really open to people who want a little bit freer thinking environment. And so those folks are going to podcasts. They're choosing podcasts over radio, and that is contributing to the declining number of listeners as far as radio is concerned. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think we all remember what was called the fairness doctrine. I would assume that many people listening are of a certain age. They may not have known that it had a name, but there was an era up till the very early 90s when if you were to do a Klan rally on the radio, you had to do a not Klan rally for equal time. And so radio was programmed with you had a little of everything. And it was all balanced, and the ratings were high, and the advertising sales were brisk, and it worked out just great. And then that got deregulated, and we ended up with exactly what you're saying, Flash, which is more of one, more chocolate than vanilla. And if people don't love chocolate, they're going to go somewhere else to find their vanilla, which is where you step in, Billy, with your podcast now. You're offering vanilla.
Right. We're offering all kinds of the whole rainbow of flavors. And what we're able to do is we're also not restricted by FCC regulations. We're not restricted by time. People can tell their whole story. Our podcasts go from anywhere between an hour. The last one was an hour and a half, just because when someone goes in a role, we can let them talk. We don't have to worry about paying for airtime or transmitters or bills like that. We get the message out. We just try and use the same kind of storytelling tactics that we used in radio, just in a podcast.
Do you think there's hope left for radio? I mean, do you think podcasting is going to influence radio in a positive way? Or do you think people are just going to go over to podcasting and not go back to radio?
I think it's hard to go back to radio because there's nothing to go back to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's one opinion out there, and then there's a bunch of religious stations, and then there's oldies. That's that's what you have out there. At least on the AM side, in streaming has taken over people tuning in on their radios like they used to. I love radio, and I'm a big proponent of radio. All of this has been inspired by a radio station out of Palm Springs. But if you don't have those clear broadcast signals, streaming is the way to go. It's cleaner, less interruptions for the most part, and you don't have any of the issues that you do with an actual broadcast.
True. I remember 20 years ago, I wanted to do a show with another woman, and the powers that be in radio wouldn't let me do it because they said people can't tell the difference between female voices. It had to be a man and a woman, two men. It was okay if you couldn't tell the difference between the two male voices, but they wouldn't let two women do it. And now it's a thing. But that's one of the reasons I think podcasting is so far ahead of radio at this point. They don't have to stick to the rules, whoever made up the rules.
Right. Exactly. There are no rules for podcasting. That's the thing. So I started doing my podcast, and I assumed that a lot of podcasts would sound more like what my podcast sound like. And I didn't realize that everyone's just doing NPR. And what I do for my podcast is I try and make it sound like a radio station. So back in, when you grew up, you'd have Casey Kasem on and someone would record it, and then they'd hand it to you, and you'd have that whole hour. Like, that's the kind of concept that we have for our podcast, is that this is an hour of community radio on demand whenever you're ready.
I love that. It reminds me of, one of the reasons that it's so fun. And thank you for pointing out that everyone is doing NPR. Everyone is doing NPR, whether it's true crime, it doesn't matter. The stuff that we
Adam Carolla, I was like, you're a radio guy. Yeah. Why is it still NPR?
Well, and they all talk like this on their podcasts, and they do true crime. And when we used to try to pitch theater of the mind the program directors would say, forget it. There's no way someone's going to listen to an hour of like music beds and sound effects and you telling murder stories. Like nobody wants that. And there's millions of them out there. And the public perception is everyone is making a fortune. Every single one of these people is rolling in cash. And it's just not true.
Right.
In podcasting?
In podcasting.
But yeah, no, very few people make any money in podcasting, right?
Yeah,
and
Adam,
like all the corporate podcasts that I've seen, they all start with 2 minutes of spots. I'm like, you haven't even given anybody anything except you have a chore to listen to this, and then we're going to give you some entertainment. And I'm like, what?
But you know, the beauty on Spotify or one of those sites is that you can fast forward through it.
Right, but I mean, the joy is you're supposed to just, play it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. But I think there's about 10% of the people with podcasts who make any money off it. And then maybe 5% who make good money.
Well,
And
here's the formula. It's really simple. You're Joe Rogan, you're on TV, you have a giant audience of millions. You say, I'm going to do a podcast. Boom.
Right.
They all check you out one time, and the ones that stay are in the hundreds of thousands. Then it grows to the millions once you get your sponsorships. Anderson Cooper about to get the sack, we're told, from CNN for his $18 million a year salary. And unfortunately, CNN is withering away. They've lost some 30% of their audience. They're blaming him, or at least blaming his salary on part of it. He's not bringing in new viewers. So he'll probably do a podcast. They'll probably give him a Sunday show or something, keep the brand alive. But all he has to do is announce once, I'm going to do a podcast. And millions of people are going to check it out just for the sensation. He is going to make a fortune. If you're not starting from the top like a movie star and announcing you're doing a podcast, you're Timmy in your mom's basement going, I'm doing a podcast.
Right.
Okay.
And there are millions of those out there.
Doing NPR.
You thought streaming was bad as far as, different options and content. Podcasting is take that times 10 out there.
But I have two favorite podcasts those are probably the only ones I listen to, but I absolutely love them. And I think it's okay for us to plug them here, right? Not that they need our support at all, because they're two of the most popular, but I love Trevor Noah's What Now and Craig Ferguson's. They are both so incredibly engaging and funny and smart and wonderful. Are there any that you guys listen to that we would know, like, these are your favorites?
So that's the irony of this is I knew about podcasting and I supported it because we did it when we were doing the radio network, but I don't listen to podcasts because I was like, I'll just listen to the radio because that's what we were podcasting. And then I never really got into the niches. Like if I had a specific topic, I'd find an episode and I would listen to that episode of a podcast, technical nerd stuff. But no, not on a regular enjoyable thing, because since I'm a radio guy, I do listen to radio still too.
There's
I'm
also the other part.
Dinosaurs.
Well, good dinosaurs. There's also the other part, Billy Foster, which is we know that podcasts are scripted. So unlike radio, this is extemporaneous speech. You really don't know what I'm going to say next. I probably don't know what I'm going to say next. I don't know how you're going to answer. But in a podcast, we know all of it.
Not all of it's scripted. No, the two I just mentioned, they're not scripted.
Yeah, they know where they're going. It's like it's produced. There are producers at that level.
True.
There is no way they're going to just freelance that into a toilet. So they know where it's going to go, where it's going to end. The questions are given the guests in advance. Sure, there's extemporaneous play about, but really it's like reality TV. It's soft scripted. You know when the breaks are going to happen. You know you're going to come back. This is what's going to happen here. She's going to pick up the chocolate cake and eat the whole thing. Then we're going to go to break. Come back, yell at her, and say, the reason you're heavy is because you ate all that chocolate cake. Then we're going to come back and put her on a diet plan. But all of it is kind of, free floating, but we know what's going to happen.
Sounds like my dream last night, not a podcast. but okay. All right, I'll go with you.
I mean, that's one thing that I learned about, when I flipped from political talk radio and into the music world of radio. Whoa. That's when I realized that morning show radios and everything is definitely theater of the mind, and is also definitely like is as real as reality TV.
The morning radio shows.
Right. The bits and these, like
Oh,
these,
yeah.
I call in and I want you to catch my boyfriend lying about something. That's all scripted. That's
That is,
all.
you know what? A lot of times in the last few years, they actually hire people to
Yes.
to be the callers and
Yes.
to make that up. And the people
They're
calling
improv
in are
artists.
actors. And I hate to say this now because there's so many people, on the other side who will accuse of people protesting of being paid actors. But on morning shows, and I know this firsthand, because someone offered me work doing this. You come up with your own idea and call into the radio show and say, my boyfriend cheated on me
Yeah.
at the Christmas party. And then they hire someone else to play the boyfriend. And it is all fabricated. None of it's
It's
true,
all,
like you
all
said.
it's
Yeah.
improv. That's how they, practice your
Yes.
improv skills. Come on and do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There used to be an era in all broadcasting, and this came from Orson Welles doing War of the Worlds. And the FCC at the time said that it was illegal to perform a hoax on the air, on the radio. There was no TV yet. And that went away along with the fairness doctrine. And so you actually had to play legitimate callers, up until the 80s and early 90s. And then all of that loosened up and it just became bits. But you
And then
really
technology.
couldn't have fake callers. This is what got Phil Hendry in trouble. It made him famous and rich, but it crashed him at the end when the public really wrapped their head around, wait a minute, he's his own callers.
He immediately vanilled.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I wonder if listeners care. Do listeners just want the entertainment? Because I haven't listened to a morning radio show probably in years now. But the people who do, and anybody listening right now who'd want to call in and say, we don't care whether it's real or not. We just want the entertainment. It's all goofball stuff. Does it really matter? Because reality TV shows are still very popular, and we know 99% of that is scripted, if not 100%.
Yeah,
so
but
it doesn't matter.
Just because we have it, is it good for us?
Oh, I've never thought it was good for us.
Okay.
I know there are people who will disagree with me because there are people who think this really is our culture. And it's important to know that because that's what our culture has followed for the last 10, 15 years is reality TV. The person in the White House was a reality TV star. So our culture is actually following that. And there are folks who believe that it's important to know what that is. I don't think it's good because I think it glamorizes and glorifies really bad behavior. And I don't mean morally
Right.
bad. I mean spiritually corrupt. And
Right.
not, I think, where we want to go as a society and as a culture. But it is still consumed. It is still what folks are watching on TV.
Oh yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean that it's certainly not popular. Because they wouldn't have all these franchises and different versions of it if it wasn't.
Right. So is it just mindless that people want? Is it just mindless like junk food? It tastes good.
I have a hypothesis, Flash. And
Yes.
so I remember being in a meeting back in the days of Clear Channel. I think we all remember that pre-iHeart.
Yeah, most people don't remember that iHeart was actually Clear Channel before it switched its name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is early Clear Channel. It used to be J-Core before then. Boy, that was radio. J-Core. Woo.
Yeah.
Then it became Clear Channel, corporatized. But I remember sitting in a meeting and the national program director was in there and said that the audience, you have to talk to the audience at an 8th grade level. So 8th grade level then versus 8th grade level now, I'm not sure what that means, but it's not a compliment. Right. And I said, well, don't we have a responsibility if we are in fact supposed to be the messengers of things that people can't access on their own? We're able to do research, we're able to bring them ideas and concepts and arguments and facts and data and perspective and all the rest of it. Don't we have an obligation not to idiotize the audience, but to lift them up? No, not at all. Your job is to make them stupid, to make them completely uninformed so that, ellipsis, they buy the cars during our commercials. Oh, that's what we're doing here.
Right.
Well, that's kind of been the trajectory of our society. I stumble over society and culture really for a very long time is to dumb down, because that's why they don't sell a lot of things. Commercials aren't really geared to folks over a certain age, because at a certain point, I think we've realized that buying all those things doesn't bring us happiness. We don't need all those things. When you're a bit younger, you think you still do. So that's why so many advertisements are focused on the younger group. You still have to fit in, you still have to buy these things, you still have to do all of these things. So if we're dumbing down society, then we're going to sell more stuff. It makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, I'm not saying we want to do it. I'm not saying it's a good plan for the future, but
Right.
that
I see what you're saying, though, as far as that. And also, I believe a big thing is decorporatizing media. It needs to be locally owned. What would save radio? Local ownership. So that way it's in your local voice. Stations aren't in. We had Cool Radio. I moved here to work at Cool Radio from Kansas City, Missouri, because I heard of Cool Radio. They killed the brand and called it Big 90. I don't even know what it's called. Big 96, whatever it is. Why? Because that's what they have across the nation, and that was easier, and that corporatizes it, and it takes all the local life out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Local ownership, because then also you can hold somebody accountable.
Right.
If they're in your community, and tell them what you actually want to hear rather than it just being corporatized and whitewashed.
Right. Just some.
And who doesn't remember the good old days? I remember the Power Pig, which was in the Florida market.
Florida. Yeah.
Yeah. And Randy Michaels invented that. So it was at the end of J-Core before it became Clear Channel. And he said, here's the line that the FCC has drawn. Step over the line and then step back. Over the line, then back. And we had, so instead of a Coke machine, it was full of beer. So it was a beer machine. This is in a radio station. I mean, it can't be legal. It certainly wouldn't be today. The conference room was filled with condoms on Monday. Not fresh ones in wrappers.
Considerate.
Yes. It was radio in the 80s. There's never been anything like it. And it sure ain't that today. Do you remember this, Billy, vaguely?
I've heard the tales. That was right when I was like,
yes.
That's when I would like peek through the window in the radio station. What's going on in there?
Yeah, I was a bit of a pup then, but I just remember the jocks, on the Power Pig doing this stuff. I'm like, how do they get away with it? Like, this can't possibly be happening.
Actually, now that you mention it, it's like, oh, okay. I actually think a couple of naughty things that I probably did at the radio station before I worked there with some of the jocks.
Can we hear?
No.
Oh, okay.
FCC regulations won't let us.
And now it's squeaky clean, like squeaky clean.
Right.
Well, yeah, well, it's I don't know. I kind of think it's boring. But I mean, I like some of the things that were cleaned up, more women on the air. I can't tell you how many radio stations that I used to work for a long time ago where there were no Black people or if they had one Black employee, it was overnight, and you had one woman maybe on the air, and she might have been middays, and then everyone else was male. I like the fact that that was starting to change, but as far as the, it's fun, that's been dampened down quite a bit as well.
Well, it's great that
Part-
there's a diversity of voices on the air now, and let's hope that
Yeah.
it continues that way. I think corporations tend to respond to pressure, and hopefully they will realize that there are women listening too, and that that's important. I mean, are you guys hearing anything or feeling anything that it's going to change, or what's your sense?
You first, Billy.
Corporate radio? I don't think corporate radio changed. No, if anything, COVID put the nail in the coffin of any hope of it, because they had to consolidate even more. Once they didn't have events to be kind of like that third leg of holding them up, they couldn't stand on their own, and I just think that really changed a lot of it too.
We can pull the curtain back on the fourth wall a bit, because why not? It's a lot of fun. So I remember, and this would be 20 years ago, in the music side of things, they fired 60,000 people in radio. This is around 2008, the big crash, never to rehire them. And they would take one disc jockey and say, you now are syndicated on 1,200 radio stations. Hooray, he says, jumping up and down in place, thinking he's going to make $300 million. No, you're not Rush Limbaugh. You are now going to record 7,000 call letters, times of the day, weather forecasts, and our computer is just going to drop in your voice on all these stations, but you're going to get paid as a single employee with a single station.
Oh, I see that going away in the next 5 to 10 years. With AI, why would they have to pay a jock?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they already have AI, and I do know of a group of stations where they'll have a man on the air, and then that man with AI changes his voice to a female, and they put that female on either the same station or a different station. And so it sounds like they have a woman on the air, but they don't. And, so there's quite a bit of deception going on with AI right now. And I don't know that anyone cares. It makes me uncomfortable, but does anyone care? Well, the problem I think we run into in this country, and maybe around the world, is if you put everybody out of work, who's going to buy the stuff you're selling? Where's that money coming from?
That's right.
Right.
Run more commercials, but who's making any money to buy it if everybody's a robot?
So here's my prediction of what's going to happen to radio. In the same way, like if you watch a news network TV and their automation is off, it's off forever, because until that commercial runs its time, because no one's actually monitoring and watching what's happening. And what's going to happen is someone's going to get the brilliant idea to make an AI jock, and he's just going to say stuff, and they're going to give him topics, and no one's going to really pay attention. And then you're going to listen. You're going to say, why is he saying this weird stuff? Because he's hallucinating and he's AI.
All right, is the male AI jock still going to make more than the female AI jock? That's what I want to know.
More electricity.
He'll eat up more electricity? That's funny. Yeah, it's tricky times we're in, certainly.
Well, one of the things that's really real that you guys know about, and I think the listeners are aware of to whatever degree the average person is aware of AI or what it really is that AI is now so perfect enough that you can't tell the difference. And even professionals now can't quite tell the difference. There's inflection, there's nuance, there's things that people with a trained ear might be able to pull out, but it's pretty flawless and it improves every day. And I remember talking to somebody that was on a Star Trek series, this is maybe 10 years ago, when Paramount started streaming their original series. And they were talking about being able to generate, computer generated characters, and then they wouldn't have to pay the actors millions. Like, why would you pay Chris Pine $21 million to be Captain Kirk when you could just make a fake one of his? And you'll remember the actor strikes. A lot of this was about AI before we didn't even know what the name was. And here we are today, where it can take my voice, completely clone it perfectly. You wouldn't know the difference. If it's hallucinating, maybe that's better, maybe it's not, but you won't know.
Well, my question to both of you, do we care? Does society care that it's not real and that it's being fooled? So, I mean, if we cared really as a culture, as a society, we'd stop it.
I'll say no, they don't care, but I'll also say even if they recognize it. For example, there's a lot of like tutorials on YouTube, and it used to be that they would just do the video and they would have just background music. Well, now they're at least adding AI voicing to describe what's happening. So there is good to it. So, and yes, people will consume it. Will they want to do it for entertainment? That's the part I don't know. If he's funny enough, and who knows? That's what's unwritten.
Yeah, I guess why would you care? It's like having a love robot. If it really is obedient and awesome and puts up with your stuff, maybe some guys prefer that because they don't have to work.
This is why I think we should care, because part of being a human being and part of growing as a human being is caring about the other person you're with. Are you pleasing the other person in bed? Are you showing up for them? Are you coming out of yourself? Are you learning about yourself, your wants, your needs, your cares, your boundaries, and another person's? If we stop that and it's just all about us getting what we want met, I think we're in danger as humanity.
Hence every Star Trek episode we've ever seen.
And I will give you back the soapbox.
Well, Billy Foster, give us where we can follow your podcast, where we can hear more of you.
Gayphx.com. Just hit play at the bottom of the screen.
Say that again.
Gayphx.com. We did it like a radio station. Gayphx.com.
And that voice, lovely.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us, Billy, and we look forward to checking with you soon and checking out your podcast with your spectrum of cool people that you interview. Also, I want to thank you, Flash. You're awesome. And I want to thank Ray, and I want to thank Wendell, Handy Wendell, who's in the control room at KPFK, and everyone else for joining us here on Unzipped. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
IMRU presents Unzipped with Carrie Harrison. Your sex, your stories, and everything in between.